I just want to thank, first of all, everyone for being here today. We have an outstanding panel of experts who are going to talk with us about what it takes to brand ourselves and to stand out from the pretty crowded marketplace that's out there for all of the different skill sets that we have. I know in this session we have folks who are in my branding class who are designers, videographers, photographers, animators, writers. We have business folks who want to start their own business or who are a part of the marketing and branding team now. We have a variety of other folks who really want to learn how to develop for themselves what places and brands like Coca-Cola would develop. And that's really what we're here to do today. And I want to thank, first of all, Jeff, for helping us with this session. I struggle sometimes with technology, but I'm very thankful to our team at Columbus State Community College. Without them, this would not happen. And this is something that other institutions really want to learn how to do, because we don't only take you into the classroom and tell you what's going on with regard to theories. We also put you on the street and say, look, this is the reality of the world, and we want you to succeed. And this is how we do that in concert with every other skill in our institution. So brand you, what do they want from me? And that's what we're going to look at today. Remember that you as a brand have around you many different publics, target markets that are going to help you succeed. They tell us that branding means at all touch points, consumers look for things that bring positive value to their lives, and you're the same way. And in this session, think about the opportunities you have to seize every one of them, every opportunity to express who you are so that you can get the career that you want using the skill sets that you have to change the world. In this session today, we are blessed to have 4 professionals in the business who have come to this meeting from different perspectives, different aspects, different places. And I have to say too, I know them, and not only are they experts, not only are they going to give you great information here today, they're flat out good people. And if you're going to surround yourself with folks, make sure you're doing that with good people. Surround yourself with people that really care a lot about not just doing business, but making certain you are successful as well. Michelle Garrett. Michelle Garrett is the founder of Garrett Public Relations, but she's also a freelance expert. She's a public relations consultant, content creator, blogger, speaker, and award-winning writer. That's easy for me to say. Michelle was named the top digital PR leader in 2020, and her blog was on the list of the top 25 must-read PR blogs. She's been selected as one of the top 13 content marketer influencers to follow, and she's a founder of a weekly chat on Twitter called Freelance Chat. And that is designed to help folks who want to work on their own, freelancers and self-employed consultants, to be successful. She is a person that specializes in crafting content, strategy, and programs for both business-to-business companies and consumers that want to get noticed. She began in Silicon Valley, but came back to Ohio so she could enjoy the snow that we have today. No, she came back to Ohio and has been recognized as an EDGE business and a woman business enterprise in the state of Ohio, certified as such. On the personal side, she's a mom of 2 teenagers and several cats. Welcome, Michelle. Chris Cochran. Oh my, Chris Cochran, talk about experience. He's been in the business since 1998. He has been an executive recruiter, a corporate recruiting manager, senior director of search and staffing. He works successfully to make companies and people happy by bringing them together. He works to complete the direct hire searches with a specialized focus on communications of any kind, sales, opportunities, IT developer roles, and more. Strong relationships and effective processes are the key components to what Chris Cochran does. And we welcome him here today too. He's also got a family here in town and is a wonderful human being. I've known him for quite some time. Scott Lanham. Scott Lanham, wow, what can I say about Scott? He is currently the Chief Operating Officer and partner with Mills James Productions, 34-year veteran of that company. He started in television after graduating from The Ohio State University, go Bucks, and he received a Bachelor of Science in Communication. He interned there, and this is important, he interned there with WOSU, which led to a work-study position with the sister station that was public radio. He was around a variety of production professionals, and they introduced Scott to a variety of freelance opportunities, shooting, audio production, and technical directing. Scott went on to become a production technician for an ABC affiliate, and that led to technical director for 5:30 and 11 p.m. newscasts. And then after 6 years of broadcasting, Scott was offered a videographer position with Mills James. Scott's been responsible for hiring over 100 employees during his tenure and has shaped the company by growing the business operationally to manage the company's facilities in Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Boston, and I think there was another one on the website. Scott his operations oversight includes post-production, studio, field production, event production, hotel and convention center, AV support, and he works with the operations in Boston, Cleveland, Procter & Gamble, and remote studios. I have to say one more thing about Scott. He was influential in securing an 18-year series of contracts with the Ohio Lottery Commission to produce, yes, the TV game show Cash Explosion. Welcome, Scott. I am a avid viewer of the show.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Paul.
And Christopher Washington. And, you know, Christopher Washington, I am so pleased that we were able to secure a bit of his time today because he brings more than 10 years of experience supporting best places to work initiatives and employee engagement programming. Christopher is a fierce advocate for people first. Again, back to the good people concept. He leads Fahlgren Mortine and their professional development series, wellness initiatives, university relations efforts, and onboarding strategies. His efforts have contributed to workplace recognition from reputable organizations, including PR News, Columbus Young Professionals Club, Smart Columbus, and the Columbus Partnership, among others. Fahlgren Mortine is an organization that works with clients to build impactful marketing and communications programs. They were founded in 1962, and it's a communications-led integrated agency. We talk a lot about that in our marketing courses, and they work around the world with a variety of clients, including 10 Fortune 500 companies. They have nearly 200 full-time marketing and communications professionals who support clients of all sizes and are globally placed and include work in social media, digital services, advertising, public relations, research, branding, media planning and buying, creative, and design. So welcome to all of our speakers today. Our agenda. Here's what we hope to accomplish. We want to get a feeling from our guests, our panelists, about what it's like to be in the business, what's worked for them. Most of all, we want, as students and those who would like to learn about how to become professionals in the business, what does a portfolio look like? What resumes stand out? And then finally, what tips should we be doing as students now before we leave Columbus State? And how can we stand out in a crowded marketplace? And hopefully we will leave here with tips that help us understand, well, what are the 3 things that we can be doing today to become active in the business? So with that, I would like to, let's see if Michelle has been able to make it. Michelle,
Hello.
you out there? There you are.
I am.
Yes.
No.
I didn't know your cats or kids' names. I'm sorry about that.
You must have found a longer version of my bio, but that's
It's
okay.
beautiful. So let me begin with you, Michelle. What's it like over your history in the business? What is it like to be in the work that you do? And can you tell us a little bit about when people are evaluated, in particular in the freelance environment, what sorts of things do those that hire them look for?
Well, sure. I think, there are more people in the freelance, field. I think there are more freelancers than ever because, a lot of people have unfortunately been laid off from their jobs due to COVID or something like that. So I saw statistics. It's kind of a crazy amount of people that are freelancing. I think the thing to remember is if you want to be a career freelancer, or as some of us like to call ourselves, a deliberate freelancer, someone who actually went after freelancing as a career choice, not something that you had to do because you had no choice. I think that there are definitely ways to stand out. And some of that is just constantly be talking to people. I think even, before you graduate, for students and on throughout your professional life, you have to always be meeting people, networking, talking to people, even though it might be a little more difficult right now because we're not out at big networking events in person. There are ways you can meet people online and kind of stay in touch, stay out there in front of people by using social media, maybe, starting a newsletter or a blog, something like that. And just really trying to connect and engage while you're out there. I think, for example, I do spend quite a bit of time on Twitter, but it has worked out really well in that, I've connected to people who have then, approached me about projects and things like that. So while I really enjoy it, there is a method, a strategy behind it, in addition to just kind of, being part of the conversation and seeing what trends are happening and things like that.
Great. Chris Cochran, what's it like for you in the business? So you've come through a variety of positions, and now today you're helping connect in a happy way those clients with those who would work for them. What's that world like? What is it like in your world to be a professional today?
Well, that's an interesting question, the way you posed that, Paul. Being a recruiter is what Michelle said, maybe perhaps on steroids, that staying in touch with people, branding yourself, of course, has mattered. It's why people reach out to me. Of course, my new business efforts are always about letting people know what my purpose is all about, which of course relates to what I think the students should be doing, is letting people know who you are and what you're about by having that purpose. And mine is to make people and companies happier by bringing them together. And so then that extends to not only the searches that I'm working on, where a company has hired me, and just for clarity, as a recruiter, I work for the company that's doing the hiring. So they're my client, and anybody else in this equation would be a candidate. And being able to, and I'm sure it looks like we'll be talking more about this though, but branding yourself is having people understand who you are very quickly. Your purpose should be very succinct, and then your brand is wrapped around that succinct notion of what you're trying to do for people.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yes. And that's really important. And I think what you said with regard to your happy statement, that's something we talk a lot about too with students, to have some sort of brand positioning statement or mantra that is a quick explanation of the value that they bring. And I think that yours does that as best as I've ever heard for a company in your line of work.
Thanks. And I was sitting in an audience listening to it was actually an AdFed event, and thinking about things that students can do is getting involved in going to these events. Especially as a student, you have a discount, a student discount to get into events with AdFed, CSCA, AMA, the American Marketing Association. And so I was sitting in the audience when this guy was talking, and I put it together. And before I had gotten out, I had come up with the purpose of my business. And it was all because I had sat in for an hour-long lunch.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Thank you. Scott Lanham, one of the beautiful things about your history is how you've worked through what many of our students are going through now, getting that first experience, that discovery position that then allows you to build what you've done, which is a phenomenal career for many years. Talk a little bit about your position in the business and how it's evolved over time and what it's like today.
Well, that is a very good question as well. Today is a lot different than it was in February of 2020. So we're still trying to figure out what this new world is, and it has changed a great deal. But I do have confidence that it's going to get back to some sort of normal here within the next 10 months or so. And the things that we used to do back in the earlier days are going to maintain some sort of relevancy. But I think the most important thing to do when you're a college student getting ready to graduate is to get as much experience as you possibly can as an intern or as a freelance person. And once you are able to put that down on your resume, that's sort of the first thing that I look for on a resume, is not what they've done in school, what have they done outside of school. It shows me that they have the capacity and the tenacity and the willingness to go a little bit farther beyond. And we don't really have a whole lot of entry-level positions here at Knowles James when it comes to editing or shooting or running audio. I mean, if you're looking at an entry-level job, it's at the front desk. But I will say, most of our front desk people, if they stayed with us long enough, have worked their way up through the company like I did. I was just a videographer 34 years ago, and today our senior producer used to work at the front desk. Our senior editor used to be in the tape room as an entry-level position. So it's important to take advantage of the opportunities and look for those things that you can actually participate in, whether it's paid for or not. One of the stories about Channel 34, when I was an intern, my job was to sweep and mop the floor. And I did a damn good job. And they noticed that. They noticed that I got into the cracks and I stayed late and I took pride in it. And that's what they were looking for back then. And I think that's sort of what people are looking for now is someone who goes just a little bit extra. And to make your resume jump to a higher level, an internship with experience while you're in college, working in the or near the profession that you want to go into, is very, very important.
Great, that's very helpful, and you bring back great fond memories when you use the words tape room.
Yes.
Yes.
That's called the media center.
Yes. Christopher Washington. So your firm deals with a lot of the elements that in a brand we would see representing the positive stories of the brand to be told to the consumers from a variety of skill sets. So what's your life like? And then another thing that you bring to this panel is your experience with higher ed and the ability to talk with students about where they are, where they want to be, and what that bridge might be. What's the world like today in your world, and how did you get there?
It's a very interesting journey, Paul. I actually started my career in public relations about 10 years ago. And through a series of conversations with leadership and the then HR team, I raised my hand and said, I think I'm more interested in our internal people. I'm really interested in culture and the internal space of how we develop our people and how we develop our associates to make them better, both personally and professionally, but also better for our clients. And I think anyone that knows or has worked with Fahlgren Moortine before, Chris Cochran can certainly attest to this. Culture is really big at Fahlgren Moortine. It's really the driving force of what allows us to do our work. When we look at our company culture and our values, we're leaning on collaboration, we're leaning on engagement, we're leaning on trust within each of our teams. And those are really the things that we are looking for when we think about talent in the workforce. So when we're engaging with students, for example, to either, say, recruit for our internship position, or we're hiring for an entry-level role, that's what we're looking at. We absolutely want you to have the experience of, working in communications, marketing, PR, advertising, the entire umbrella of our industry. But we're also looking at culture. And we want to ensure that in addition to you having the hard skills, do you also have the soft skills that align with how we go about doing business? So when I think about my role internally, that's really what we're trying to foster. So I do a lot with professional development and help developing our associates. We're leaning on the expertise of our internal employees to train each other on the different areas of our business, but we're also doing it in a collaborative and engaging way. So we're taking that industry knowledge, but combining it with our company culture. So my world is exciting in that way because, what I get to do really is personal. It's not just the transactional moment of here's the assignment, produce a piece of work, but we're really trying to create meaningful experiences for our employees that ultimately will translate to the work we do for our clients.
Very interesting. Yes. And the culture aspect of it as well. To me, that's vital, that the person that comes in doing the work also fits not just the skill set needed, but the environment, the culture, the mantra of the organization. And I really appreciate you expressing that, because I think sometimes we forget about that when we're out chasing work. Let me ask, so let me go back around with our panel. Michelle, what do portfolios or resumes or work examples, what is that like in your world? And in particular, in a freelance model, how do you show off what you have done and let that possible client then find value in your work? What should a student's portfolio or resume look like in that regard?
Well, I think it does depend on, of course, what area you're specializing in. For writing, which is kind of my area, I use Muck Rack as my portfolio. It's free, and they compile all of my bylined articles. I think I have over 250 articles in that portfolio, which is not certainly everything that I've written, but it is obviously a pretty good sampling, if somebody wants to look at that and get an idea of my style. So that's what I've used. The other thing I would say about resumes and just cover letters, any way you're representing yourself in writing, is you have to make sure that it is error-free. I cannot overstate the importance of that. I do think that, some people, I don't know, I feel like there are so many tools that you can use now, like Grammarly, and other tools like that, to help you if you need somebody to, just need a source to look at your writing, and just, maybe you can just ask even a friend or colleague or someone at least to just look over it, maybe read it aloud so that you can catch any potential errors. Obviously, spell check is not enough. And I just feel like I see so many. We were just talking, and this is kind of a funny example. In public relations, you have to be very careful that you spell public with an L. And if you don't, the spell check is not going to catch that error. And all you need to do to, see what I'm talking about is to go over to LinkedIn and type it in without the L and see how many folks have actually missed that very crucial and simple typo.
So hopefully I haven't done that.
You didn't come up when I searched. We were
Good,
just talking about it the other day, and I checked. I mean, it's thousands. Public information, public relations, anybody with that word in their title. So that's just an example.
Great, very helpful. Yes, yes. Chris Cochran, in your business, what does a portfolio look like? This stuff's coming to you. What makes a portfolio or a resume stand out and cut through that clutter?
Well, being brief, I guess, playing along with the line of being succinct. Putting your best foot forward with as little examples as possible, because you just won't have people's attention for that long. So maybe 7 to 10 pieces demonstrating what you can do. Your first piece that people see is it better be your best, because you want them to look at the second thing. And there are multiple formats that you could put your portfolio on. You could do a site, you could do a WordPress, you could do a Squarespace. Behance may be a good one because it's associated with LinkedIn. And so then when you've got your LinkedIn profile with your Behance portfolio, it kind of makes a nice resume, portfolio, examples of your work type of combination. And I like portfolios that, so often the person that's going to see that portfolio isn't going to have you taking them through it. So your portfolio should do a decent job of explaining what the viewer is looking at. So, you have challenge, solution, results is a good way to think about this. And I know maybe perhaps as students, you don't necessarily have those results to report as far as how well a certain program or promotion did. But having that understanding of what the challenges and what the solution you presented will be something that you're going to work on for the rest of your life in your career if you're a creative. So that's important to have, as opposed to just having images. Christopher, I'm sure this strikes you too, where you get something and you're like, well, I don't really know what I'm looking at, because you're not providing any contextual understanding of what this piece is. So that's what I would say about portfolios.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, and then Scott Lanham, Mills James Productions, you get a variety, I'm sure, of resumes, portfolios, and Chris Cochran just talked about different types of images. You're seeing things, I'm sure, that are animated, some things that are shot, some things that are produced. When that stuff comes to you, how does someone, say, in our media creation and tech area, stand out if they don't have flat art or if they don't have a regular resume? What happens in your world when resumes and portfolios come to you?
Well, typically when you look at the package, it's how they interact with Mills James up front. So we also have a process when someone applies for a position. Typically, if someone just sends in a resume, it doesn't really go anywhere. So there is an application online. I look at that and just make sure that it's all filled out properly, because that's important. If there's any fields that are left blank, it sort of leads to questions. But at the very bottom of our online application is a place to put an introductory letter, a resume, and a portfolio reel. And I go straight to the reel. And if it's an artistic kind of a role, if it's an editor, if it's a director of photography or a motion graphics designer, I go to the reel. And someone just said it's the most important thing that puts your best work up front, and it really is true. I don't know how many times I've stopped a reel 5 seconds in when something wasn't really blowing me away, when I've got maybe 20 or 30 other reels to review that day. So you put your best work up front, whether it's audio or motion graphics or whatever. And then if I'm looking for a video technical director, I sort of go up and look at the resume and just make sure that they've worked at places that are credible, things that I'm aware of, companies that do the same kind of things that we're really looking for. So apply, it's not unheard of to make a specific resume for, let's say, Mills James. If you're looking for a production job, you can tailor a resume specifically for that one company that's different from another company, because you're able to go online and figure out what they do. And if you're interested in events, or something like that, your one single resume may not, cover that. So it might be an interesting notion to have several different resumes that are targeted for individual companies. If I was applying for a job at P&G, it certainly wouldn't be the same resume that it would be if I was applying for an ad agency job. So, make your resume fit the job that you're trying to go for. And again, that portfolio starts with whatever the company is asking you to do, which would be, in our case, fill out an online application. And, that tells us a lot about the person. And I don't know if a lot of other companies do that, but it's very important to us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah, and I think that does go back to the Mills James culture, which is very much focused on people and understanding what that person is and how that person can then fit into the culture of Mills James, which is a wonderful environment of people first. I think that's important. Christopher Washington, Fahlgren Mortine. So I'm sure you get a variety of clients requests that then lead to portfolios and resumes. Talk a little bit about what in your world, which is multidimensional, what is it that you're trying to find through that representation of work?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you, Scott, I've been smiling for the past couple of minutes because what you're saying is just absolutely resonating with me. And I think how we go about looking for talent at Fahlgren Mortine. And as you mentioned just a moment ago, Paul, I did work just across the street at one of your neighbors, CCAD, several years ago. And so this is a conversation that I had with students almost daily about how to really sell yourself, how to really position yourself in a way that makes you appear different, appear and be more qualified than your competitors. And so oftentimes the feedback that I gave to students is before you even assemble the portfolio, before you tailor your resume towards the company, tailor your cover letter, all of those things, take a step back and say, what do you know about this company? Because that is then going to be the foundation that then paints the picture for your resume, for your cover letter, and then how you go about shaping your portfolio and supporting documents. Without an understanding of the company, you can't then explain to HR, myself, or the hiring manager in the department why you believe you are a qualified fit. Because if we're going back to culture, going back to the skills, it's not just the work that you've done, but it's about how your skill set fits within the needs of the organization. So you're creating this mutually beneficial experience between both the candidate and the employer. So you have to know what the company does. And looking at the website is a great place to start. Oftentimes there are case studies, other examples of work, company values are oftentimes listed on a business's websites. And I think being able to convey that in both the cover letter, your resume, or ultimately the interview is another way to say, here's how I demonstrate the values of your organization in my everyday work as a marketer, a PR professional, a designer, etc. So again, you're making those connections between you yourself as the candidate and the employer that's seeking to fill that position. You also have to understand the role and the need that that role is filling within the business. And so then going back to Scott's point earlier about how we tailor our portfolios, it's not just about showing the best, but it's about showing the best that is most relevant to what the company is looking for. And so we have to understand by looking at the job description specifically, what are they hoping to fill? What clients are they going to be supporting? What need currently doesn't exist that they're trying to fill within this role? And then again, demonstrating that through the resume, the cover letter, and then ultimately the portfolio. And then, anytime that you just reinforce that alignment with culture, that's icing on the cake. So when I'm looking at resumes, when I'm looking at cover letters and portfolios, those are the things that really come to mind. And the people that are able to show those things are ultimately the ones invited in for interviews.
And how do they, in this world today in which we're operating, how are they getting those resumes and portfolios to you? So, because I'm sure you get a lot of stuff every day and you have to sort through all that stuff. How does that work? How does it get to you? And then how do they separate themselves at that front door?
Well, I think to a point that we made earlier, networking is really kind of where it starts. The days of, I think, applying to a job and then ultimately making it all the way through are limited. And for the bulk of the people that I know who have landed in their ideal career situation, the conversation started well before the actual interview discussion. So I think, really starting those discussions through networking, making the connections with people like us who want to be great advocates for you students is a really great place to start. I really believe in this kind of rule of three, and that your first engagement with an employer should not be the ask to hire me, but really it should be, hi, this is an introduction. I'd love to learn more about your organization. The second time you engage may not even be the time that you ask, I want to apply for this position, please hire me. But really the third time and beyond. So you're laying that genuine, authentic, foundation and desire that I'm genuinely interested in your company. And so let's have a conversation about your needs and how my position, my skills may in the future align with what you're looking for. And then in terms of, actually when we get to the application phase, the interview phase, we see, assuming that the portfolio or resume hasn't already been shared in a previous networking conversation, although it probably has, but if it hasn't, they're coming through as PDFs. We're seeing a lot less of the printed portfolio these days. Especially in the era of COVID-19, we are still in a work from home status. So 99.9% of what we do is very much virtual and digital. And so, anytime that an applicant can maintain that digital status to get the information that they're sharing about themselves to us, that just helps streamline the entire interview experience workflow.
Working from home. I wonder what it'll be like in July, August, September. I'm hoping working from home some. Great points. So in the remaining time that we have with you today, I'd like to go around the panel and just ask for some tips. Last time we did this, each panelist had like 3 tips that they say, if I had my former self in front of me 30 years ago, here's what I would tell myself today. Michelle, give us some tips, please. What do you think about Michelle 10 years ago and where you are today, 20 years ago?
Well, it's more important than ever to work on your personal brand, even if you work for a company, especially if you work for yourself. But either way, having a strong personal brand has never been more important, really. And by that, I mean, you want a professional headshot. I don't mean having your friend take your picture, in front of your house, but I mean actually maybe paying a photographer, and it doesn't have to be that expensive to do that. And then, having your portfolio, we talked about that, and the social media presence. And by that, I mean, you can have fun on social media, but you also want to remember that what is on there can be found by anyone at any time. And so you have to use a little bit of good judgment there. I think those are all things that serve professionals well, whether they are self-employed or work for someone else. And another tip would be just to always look for opportunities to learn and to stretch yourself. Be the person who kind of steps up to the plate and, offers to take on maybe something that's outside your comfort zone, something that might stretch your abilities a little bit. One way I did that was through professional organizations. Through when I was in California, it was IABC. When I was here, it was the American Marketing Association. I volunteered. I was part of the board out in California. I was president of the chapter for a year. And of course, that was all volunteer work, but it was very important because I got a lot of experience doing things that I might not be doing in my day-to-day client work. And I also met a lot of people. So there are just a lot of benefits to that. So those are a couple of tips I can give.
That's wonderful. And I noticed that you have a logo that
Yes.
represents you, Michelle. What do you think about that? Because, that's another thing we talk about, using colors and terms and phrases and even logos just as a brand would. to represent yourself. What's your experience there?
Well, I had a great designer do that for me. And so that was not something I started out with, but it was something, you know, as I decided to redo my website, my business cards, and my branding, really overall, that was kind of a very important piece of that. And again, I think it's probably, maybe, I don't know, like if people think that would be expensive to have that work done, but honestly, I don't think it needs to be. You can always trade expertise if you, you know, don't have the ability to pay, you know, a graphic designer to do it. But I would try to get somebody with some experience to do it. I wouldn't just go online to Fiverr and pay somebody, you know, $5 to design your logo. So.
Great, thank you. Chris Cochran. Chris, one of the things that you've helped me with over the years is the tip of flexibility. The fact that, you know, sometimes we get locked into ways of thinking, and you are able to look beyond the moment. What kind of tips would you give to yourself, say 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that our students today can look beyond the moment they have in the classroom?
Yeah, you know, I think when you're a student, or people knowing that you're entering your career or coming into an industry for the first time, knowing who you are and being able to express that, because I think that oftentimes the first question is, well, tell me about yourself. You know, you don't have perhaps this big resume that has all these opportunities that you've done. So there's not a lot of work experience that you can talk about. So they're going to ask you about yourself. And when they do, you need to be an expert on that subject matter, right? So, you know, knowing who you are, so taking people through your values, that's a good one. I think that's important. Christopher touched upon company values. So by sharing your personal values, how that drives your conduct and how you will then perform in a role with that company. Matching values, that's always really good. I think the other thing is just wanting everybody to know that believe in yourself. The person that's interviewing you, and this is every person I've ever interviewed, I want them to get the job. When I meet them, I want them to be the one, right? So you have people, that interviewer is really rooting for you. They want you to be great. And so what you're trying to do is meet those expectations of who they want you to be in that interview. And so doing so is, you know, quite a few of the points that we've already touched upon. Having an error-free resume, having it be directed towards the opportunity and the business that you're applying for, and, you know, doing your research. That's what it's about, to be able to capture who the company is looking for, who the company is, what your resume should look like. You know, that job description role, you know, what you've done, make it sound just like that bullet point that they have in their job description. That's gonna let them know, yep, he's who, she's who we're looking for. That may seem obvious and perhaps maybe even cheating a little bit, but it's not. They're expressing what they want you to do. And if you've done that, tell them you've done that the way they're describing it.
Excellent.
That's probably a good key. Yeah, so showing up prepared, and it's easier now than it's ever been.
Excellent. Well, let's ask Scott Lanham, who I've admired, and now I can say I've admired from the mop to the mountaintop. Scott, what are the tips? I mean, you looking back on, you've had a successful career because of all the different things that you've been able to plug into, and then you've shown value all along the way. What would our students get from you? What tips would you say to yourself 20, 30 years ago?
Well, I think the most important thing, like you look back on a career at you know, being with the same company for 34 years. I think that's rather odd now, and I sort of wonder, you know, how I sort of got here and where I am, because it's just I stayed here because I kept on, growing, and I saw growth potential. But looking back, I've said, do I have any regrets? And when I was sitting in class, I didn't realize that the people that I was, in that class with, I was going to be either their client or their coworker or their boss, or they were going to be my boss. And, that was one of those things where it really just didn't click, of how small a community is, when you're all in the same kind of a classroom looking to do the same kind of thing. Your paths will, they will cross at some point in time. And you just want to, not look back and say, boy, I wish I wasn't such a jerk to that one person, because I don't feel like I can call them up and ask him for a job or ask him to be a client. But that's one of the things that I look back on and say, I wish I would have been a little less of a college student when I was a senior, and be more of a, hey, I need to find a job, and look more like a professional. But and then once you get that opportunity to get an interview, you want to do the normal things like everyone has said. You want to be on time. Actually being on time is late, so you want to be a couple of minutes early to your Zoom, as it's going to be now. And one of the cool things about Zoom, and I haven't used Teams an awful lot, but when I interview someone and it's for a creative position, I pull up their portfolio and we go through it, page by page, reel by reel, frame by frame it sometimes, and it gives you a good opportunity to sort of take a look at what they are. But we always ask, and is the person that we're seeing the real person? Are they authentic? Are they what they're going to end up being like when we call them in for the second interview? Because once we hit that second interview, we've already looked at every social media post that they've done. We have a good idea of what their personality really is, and we even go as far to have them take a secondary test. It's called a zero risk, and sort of gives us some additional questions that we can ask them on that second or third interview. But and just understand the simple things. You're going to probably have a drug test. They're going to look at your driving record. They're going to look at, if I have someone that, is going to be financially responsible for something, you may have a request to be able to look at your, financial responsibility, what you've done over the past, 10 or 15 years. Just be prepared, and, understand that when we do an interview, we're actually, or at least I'm rooting as much as Chris is for this person to have this job. I envision them in the role. And if I can't see them in the role at the end of the interview, that's just that next thing. But I actually put them in the chair, or I put them out in the field, or I put them in the rack room, and I envision them, doing the job. And I might even throw them some scenarios. You'll get asked, what's the hardest thing you've done? How have you handled people who are difficult, and things like that. But it's that first impression of whatever hiring manager is trying to just see if you fit. And if you're dressed correctly, if you're trying to mirror the company's values by your appearance, you got to at least the first step. And the second step is just proving that you've got the growth potential, the ability to take on more responsibility, and someone that we can mold and fit into whatever culture is going to be in this new world. And that's yet another thing. All of our people that are creatives are working from home, and we talk about collaboration and culture. And when I do a second interview, which I'm doing several these days, I actually bring them in and we sort of show them an empty building, because we had 100 and some people in this building back in January, and now it's just maybe 15 or 20, for the most part. So they ask about culture, and we say, well, we're still trying to work that out. And they ask, and they work from home, and you say, well, you're a creative company and you like to be able to, either look over the cube and say, hey, what do you think about this idea, or walk across the hall and ask another designer to, help you with some sort of a plug-in. And it's really going to be interesting to see how this works out. I think we're going to have a blended work force in the year to come, maybe starting in November, working, half the time from home, half the time from here. But I don't think we'll ever get everybody back. We're not going to, that's just not going to happen. I lost a guy that I hired, worked here for 10 days and took a job that didn't require him to come to work.
Interesting.
He could work from home. So anyway, it's, as employers, we have to be flexible. And as potential employees, you also have to be flexible too, and just present yourself with, in an authentic way.
Interesting. That is quite a bit of forward looking that, I guess every employer should be doing. You're doing it, obviously, thinking about, well, how do I match needs of the organization, clients, and bring in those employees and freelancers to fit that. And I don't think every organization is doing that right now. That was very insightful. Christopher Washington, you have a personality that's known in the market as being people first. What kind of tips would you give yourself as a person first? Maybe, well, you're maybe in the business, 20 some years, or what would you say to yourself back then? What tips would you give?
Not quite 20, but well, I'll say this. It's a really exciting time to be a student right now. It's obviously a unique experience that the world is going through, that students are going through, trying to keep up with learning and entering the workforce. And I think despite the current state of all things, there are still opportunities to connect, to network, to build those relationships. And so I want to commend every student here that showed up today. This is part of that journey to get toward that first full-time job after graduation. And between now and then, you're going to have a lot more interactions with employers, networking conversations, introductions, and ultimately an offer for an internship, for a full-time role, maybe several offers. And the thing that I want to encourage students to just remember is that it's okay to say no. It's okay if the position is not right for you. It is okay if the values and approach of that business do not align with your values and the skills that you bring to the table. And I think what we sometimes forget is that we put this pressure on ourselves to find that first opportunity. But when we take steps like today, when we network, when we're diligent and we build those relationships, we then have the opportunity to assess the employer and say, is this the right opportunity for me? Because during that first engagement with the resume, when you make it to the interview, we're interviewing you just as much as you should be interviewing us to understand whether or not this is, again, going to create that mutually beneficial experience that is good for both the candidate and the employer. So would definitely encourage you to keep that in mind. And in the meantime, keep networking. Find us on LinkedIn, keep the conversation going. My door is always open, so please remember that. The other thing that I would encourage is staying close with faculty like Professor Carringer here, getting in touch with career services. I'm a little biased because that's the world that I came from temporarily, but these are advocates that are in place to support students. Their jobs is to be the voice for the student and infuse that learning. And oftentimes between faculty and staff like career services, there are connections that they can help build for you, or at least support as you're engaging with employers. So don't forget that you have resources on campus that can really be part of that career journey. And I think we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but consider some sort of involvement in a professional organization. There are so many locally between, AdFed and PRSA, the Columbus Society for Communicating Arts, and so many more that are just really great groups of individuals. They're good people, like we talked about at the beginning, that are just excited to be part of the industry. And, we're all wanting everyone to find that first opportunity. And so don't be afraid to reach out and build those relationships and let that be part of that career journey as well. So chin up, keep smiling. I know it's a crazy time, but we're all cheering for you. And I think at the end of the day, it starts with those relationships, and we're excited to be part of them.
Awesome. That is fantastic support, help for students who oftentimes feel like they're, out there in their own place, their own space, and not being supported by those in the community who, like us and like you, want to support the student and want to support their success, because ultimately their success is our business's success and our community. And we forget that sometimes as students, that we're in this together. We're all a part of this, regardless of our position, our skill set. We're helping grow what is the community of the future, and we're all in it together. And I really appreciate the comments that you just made about people and about using services to be supportive of your work. I see we're running up against time. What I would like for any of the students who are here who have questions, if you could email me your questions, I would be more than happy to send them out to our panel. In observance of their time today, I want to be respectful, but I do also want to say this. These people are not just professionals, as we have stated early on. They're good people who are there to motivate and move forward all of our success. And so I just wanted to say thank you to Michelle Garrett, Garrett Public Relations, freelance expert, Chris Cochran, Chris Executive Search, Scott Lanham, gosh, Mills James Productions, Chief Operating Officer, and Christopher Washington from Falgren Moortine. I cannot express, I don't have the words to say thank you in a way that is representative of how I feel and how I'm sure our institution and our students feel today. But we appreciate you being here, and thank you so much for your expert leadership. And most of all, for your friendship and your caring for our community. And we hope to see all of you, as we know Scott Lanham has already been there with his mop. We hope to see you all at the mountaintop. Thank you, and please send me your questions.